Martin, in the sci-fi horror TV series, is one of the many unfortunate people who have been trapped in a mysterious town called the Township that's surrounded by a dark, impenetrable, and ominous forest, from which escape seems formidable. He had been a former United States Marine. As the series unravels, he becomes a mysterious figure in Boyd's efforts to survive and uncover the truth about the supernatural forces at work in the township and the forest. Martin, throughout the series, appears as a complex, unprecedented character who seems to be troubled by his dark past and struggles with his inner demons. Let us now explore the various contours of this multifaceted character and its contribution to the story. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
We're out of time!
Who is Martin? Why does he want Boyd to kill him? Boyd Stevens is the sheriff and the de facto mayor of the town. He's been a decorated military officer for his contribution to the Iraq War and constantly tries to utilize his capabilities to ensure that the town remains organized and safe despite the escalating horrors and turmoil that haunt its residents. After climbing through a faraway tree, Boyd is transported to the bottom of a dry well in the dungeon. The dungeon here is the mystic lair of the Music Box Monster, an evil and mysterious creature that preys on the poor, trapped residents of the town. When Martin notices Boyd's presence, he asks him if he exists in reality and is not an illusion of some wizardry. When Boyd answers affirmatively, Martin makes an offer. Martin states that he's ready to help Boyd if Boyd, in return, is willing to help him. Boyd agrees to this quid pro quo arrangement. Martin then instructs Boyd to climb up and sends down a rope. Martin also warns Boyd to be quick, as the wicked forces at play will return soon. After much hardship, when Boyd finally climbs up, he grabs a gun in his defense and points it in the direction of the voice. Boyd is horrified when he finds an old, feeble man, starved to the point that his ribs are visible, barely covered by some torn shreds of clothing, his beard long and untidy, chained to a wall. Martin appreciates Boyd for making it up despite the length of the climb. In his frail voice, Martin asks Boyd if it's a gun that he's pointing at him. Boyd says yes. Martin seems happy that Boyd has a gun already. He says that will make it easier. Nervous, Boyd asks, "Make what easy?" To which Martin replies, "To kill me." Boyd is left flustered at this request and continues to explore the area. To his horror, he discovers two skeletons, presumably human, chained in the same fashion as Martin. Boyd asks Martin when he had been trapped there and who did this to him. Martin only manages to mumble that he'd been trapped there for so long that counting the days had become difficult for him. Boyd tries to release Martin, but Martin only requests for him to leave before they come back. It's here that Boyd discovers that Martin has been a Marine after seeing the marks on his arm. Martin repeats himself, saying that if Boyd intends to help him, he should just kill him before it's too late. Boyd is still unwilling to leave Martin behind. He begins looking for things he could use to break the chain shackling Martin. He picks up a round pebble and begins to rub it on the handcuffs. Martin says that even if Boyd frees him, he doesn't think he could make it to the town. Annoyed by this, Boyd says he would carry him if needed. He also assures him that once in the town, Martin could be cured with the help of the people and the doctor. To give him further hope, Boyd shows Martin the talisman and claims that it protects them from creatures and that they wouldn't be able to harm Martin. Martin then interjects, claiming that the creatures that come out of the forest at night are just the tip of the spear. Boyd then tries to change the subject and asks Martin which city he's from, to which Martin replies, Millbrook. Suddenly, Boyd is halted by pleasant music that starts playing in the background. Restless, Martin now pleads with Boyd to leave. He says that there is eternal darkness in the forest, and that Boyd will be haunted by nightmares so terrifying he can't even imagine, or see things humans were never meant to. He tells Boyd to get out of there before the music stops. Boyd ignores Martin and proceeds in the direction of the music. He discovers a music box nearby, which has a doll rotating on it, and a mirror in the background. Boyd is able to break one of Martin's chains as the music box keeps playing and the doll keeps spinning. Martin then asks Boyd if he ever thinks Abby was right about it all being a dream. Boyd is shocked by this question, as Abby is his wife, and asks Martin how he knows about that, but Martin collapses to the ground, groaning in pain. Boyd then notices worms crawling beneath his skin. The music stops, and Martin says that they're out of time. Before Boyd can react, Martin puts his freed hand on Boyd's arm and makes a deep wound in the shackle hanging from his wrist. He then says, "My blood is now your blood," and dies. Suddenly, the dungeon disappears, leaving only ruins behind. The reasons that might have triggered Martin to ask Boyd to kill him are only based on speculation, as Martin's character or story is not involved in the forthcoming episodes. But there are quite a few conspiracy theories that the audience could deduce. One is the apparent desperation to escape the misery and pain of being shackled to the walls of the dungeon. Martin knows that if he isn't freed, he too will turn into a desolate skeleton like his other two counterparts. Martin is also aware that he cannot survive even if he's unchained, and thus considers it better to die while he's still human. Another theory revolves around predicting what could have been Martin's past life before he ended up in this frightful condition. Many articulate that Martin might have been involved in some immoral deeds that could be related to the town's dark past. Consumed by grief, guilt, and self-loathing, Martin motivates Boyd to kill him and release him from his remorse. Martin's soul could have just been tired of performing the tasks he was assigned, and when it became burdensome, he asked Boyd to kill him. Boyd, with the help of the torch, tries to make his way out, but stumbles out of the debris and sits behind a tree. He tries to catch his breath, but then sees a dog approach him. Boyd gets up and begins following the dog. He struggles to keep pace and overhears the howl of the creature. Cautious, he puts out the flame with his torch and hides behind a tree. After some time, Boyd follows the dog to Clary's canned goods truck and is surprised when he's allowed inside by Tabitha and Victor. Elgin approaches the goods carrier and is desperate to get refuge. Elgin is one of the passengers on the Grand Rapids runner bus that happens to be trapped in the town. Tabitha and Victor don't allow him inside and instead shut the door and hang the talisman. Boyd points the gun at Elgin and interrogates him about his origin. Boyd lets Elgin inside despite Victor's distrust. Later in the season, when Boyd is at the clinic, he tries to explain to Christy about his encounter with Martin at the dungeon, and how he had seen the worms that seemed to have been crawling inside his body, feeding on his blood, but for some strange reason wouldn't kill him. Christy seems visibly disturbed, and Boyd asks her if she's finding it difficult to believe him. Seeing the worms crawl beneath the skin of his forearm, Boyd asks Christy to promise that if things go bad for him, she'll be the one to end his misery by killing him. Christy steps out and talks to Kenny about Boyd's condition. Kenny expresses his concerns, saying that he thinks Boyd's mental state is deteriorating, much like his father's did. Christy refuted these claims, stating that dementia only affects an individual in old age, but Kenny disagrees, pointing out that it does happen eventually. Boyd tries to sleep, but is frightened when he sees the ballerina from the music box trying to strangle him. Soon, an injured Ellis is brought to the clinic, and having bled a lot, he now needs a blood transfusion. Even though Boyd is distraught by his son's condition, he refuses to give blood because the worms creeping inside of him could also infest Ellis. Toward the end of Season 2, Boyd returns to the ruins of the dungeon where he'd met Martin in broad daylight, and here he finds Ren, Mari, and Julie shackled to the wall the same way as Martin had been. He can also hear the same music box playing. Boyd tries to reach out to them, promising to free them. He proceeds to destroy the box, but is halted by Abby's vision. Abby warns him against destroying the box, saying it would only prolong the trouble. The three then begin to growl in pain. Abby tells him to leave the three prisoners, but Boyd smashes the music box with the torch, and all three wake up. The dungeon disappears once again, and Boyd declares victory. The same dog from before appears and then runs off into the forest. What happened to Martin? Martin's character in the second season has ignited more questions than answers. Who the heck on earth was he? How did he end up being imprisoned in the dungeon? And how did he know about Abby and her assumption that all this might just be a dream? Given the bare revelations he made, he could have also been aware of the murder spree Abby went on to wake up the town inhabitants from their dream. And most importantly, what happened to Martin? A popular theory seems to be that Martin was a courageous Marine who, after discovering the ghastliness in the town, decided to help its people, but was trapped in the faraway tree and was tortured by the devilish creatures. Many also suspect that Martin is not human at all and is just a monster who has incarnated himself into a human form. But if this argument is to be trusted, then what explains Martin's death? Monsters don't die just like that. Also, in the last episodes, 3 more city folk were found in the same condition, which suggests that all of this could be a vicious cycle where Martin and the others have been caged. But many others concluded Martin was a manifestation of evil, and it was no coincidence that Martin had the No Man Left Behind tattoo as a trap to win Boyd's empathy and provoke him into unleashing the evil on the town. Martin was an apparition manifested by the evil to enable Boyd to take him back to the town. But if that's true, why did he die the moment he was set free? Is he really dead or left the curse? Martin being dead or not would forever be inconclusive because we don't know if he was alive at that point to begin with. A human can't be alive if subjected to that state of torture, especially for years. A human would need water, food, air, and a place to answer nature's call to survive. But Martin did not seem to need or perform any of these. The curse under which Martin had been reeling could have been passed on to Boyd when he wounded his arm. The worms that once infested Martin were seen similarly crawling inside Martin's body. If Martin had died in reality, then why were Ren, Julie, and Mari trapped in the dungeon in the same fashion as Martin had been? The events following Martin's death and the release of the 3 people are the same, with the dungeon turning into ruins and a familiar dog approaching Boyd. Does this indicate that the curse only attaches itself to new victims when the previous one dies? Marvelous verdict. The most plausible verdict to all the fiasco related to Martin would be that Martin was a ghostly imprint, who when alive was specifically chosen to carry the cicada curse. After his demise, Julie, Ren, and Mari were chosen for the cause. He could then have been chained to the ruins until there was someone who could replace him and take on his duties. At some point long ago, there was a man named Martin, on whom befell the curse, and his soul just became the vessel of a cursed entity to communicate with the town inhabitants and also spread the curse. After the season finale, there seems very little possibility that Martin could be alive, as there's no further reference to suggest otherwise. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.
What's wrong?